name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel. I am excited to talk about some of these books that I read the past week. So let's just jump into that. So I have heard this book talked about by AJ Dunn over at AJ Dunn Reads and Writes so many times. So I finally got around to reading The Secret History by Donna Tartt. So this is following a guy who is at an elite New England college and decides to join this group of 5 students that works only under this one classics professor and learns Greek, and it's like kind of this elite club. And what we find out, and we know this from the first chapter so it's not spoilers, is that a murder is going to take place, and it's kind of a whodunit but in reverse. It's an interesting one. Do you know what it made me keep thinking of was it would be an interesting read it with Crime and Punishment, which I have, read a little bit of recently, just because you have kind of that crime happens early on, and then what happens as it warps the main characters' relationships and perspectives on the world. And I thought that kind of looking at those was very interesting. In this book, where in Crime and Punishment, everything, it just really destroys Raskolnikov. You also get him struggling with, no, it was justified, it was fine, and I feel like you get a lot of that with these characters where they almost seem indifferent to one of the first crimes they commit and really are trying to justify what they've done. I was a little confused with our main character, why he decided to be involved at all. It was an interesting thing because the other characters, you could see how they were all tied together and they really didn't have a choice at a certain point. They were all in this together. But our main character kind of got sucked into it by chance, and he could have backed out. It was interesting to watch our main character's longing for belonging and friendship lead him down some paths that I don't think he would have considered early on. The Secret History was very compelling. I couldn't put it down. At times I thought it was very pretentious and wordy. This book is longer than it needs to be, but and the characters like to speak in ancient Greek and think of themselves as these classicists and whatever else, and honestly I look at them and I'm like, you are teenagers that are on drugs killing people. Let's take a step back and acknowledge what's going on for what's going on, because they are very pretentious in their thinking, which I think is part of the book. It's not necessarily a commentary on how good the book is, it's just the characters can drive you nuts. And I think that's the point, is kind of watching these people who are kind of self-deluded and seeing the decisions that they're making. The poor girl in this book, I think she's really the victim in a lot of this, but also, they all participate in murder, and not a spoiler, it happens in the first chapter. So, there's a lot that goes into this. It really is an interesting study. And I did just think about Crime and Punishment. There were a lot of things that made me think of it. Maybe it's just because it's the most similar one that I've read recently, but, pairing those books together is an interesting one. It gave me a lot to think about. I'm still not quite sure on some of it, but yeah, let me know what you've thought of this one. So this next book I did wrong. I listened to Seek You, A Journey Through American Loneliness by Kristen Radke, and oh, sorry about the crying. I live across the street from a daycare, so we get a little bit of screaming in the background. So anyways, this book is interesting. I feel like it had a really interesting premise. It's talking about just loneliness and a bunch of different facets of loneliness, and how when humans are isolated they run into lots of problems and ways that we look for connection in a modern world. So premise-wise, I was on board. What I didn't realize when I listened to this is that it's a graphic novel. And so my biggest complaints are just that it didn't really have any substance. I got to the end and I'm like, okay, it touched on lots of topics, but never actually really gave me anything. And I think a lot of it was because it was supposed to be in a visual format, and listening to the audiobook just wasn't helpful. So I don't think it's really going to stick with me. And because I didn't really enjoy the audiobook, I don't really want to go back to the graphic novel. But if you are interested in picking this one up, don't do it audiobook. I feel like something was missing, and it was probably the graphic novel, the art that goes with it. So this was a bit of a disappointment. Now, I read the book Unbound, My Story of Liberation and the Birth of the Me Too Movement by Tarana Burke. And excellent book. It is a memoir. It is heartfelt, heartbreaking, and talks about her story. My only little complaint on this, I can see why she started the book as she did. She had a chapter talking about the Me Too movement and how she felt when she found out the Me Too hashtag was being used and it wasn't connected to her work that she had been working, like her activism and her work that she had already been using. Anyways, I understand why she did that, because she was talking about her movement, but it set up the book to make me think that she was going to be talking about specifically activism and what she did and how she did it. And I think she did talk about that, but it was much more personal than that, and I didn't really get the hint from that from the first chapter. So the rest of the book was amazing, and the first chapter, I get it, but if you read the first chapter and think it's going to be one thing, just know this is a highly personal, amazing, and impactful memoir. And her strength and the lessons she's learned are applicable to so many people and are so important in our world today. So highly recommend. It's also very much a difficult topic to read about because, I mean, obviously it's talking about her personal take on the Me Too movement, and so it's her past with sexual abuse and learning how to deal with that by connecting with others. And so, I mean, trigger warning there, but highly recommend. Excellent, excellent book. Now, I read the book Under a White Sky, The Nature of the Future by Elizabeth Colbert. And this is really talking about different ways that we have tried to intervene in the natural world as humans and how it's kind of backfired, and also how we have gotten to a point where the only way to really improve things is to keep intervening. So interesting, very different. It really feels like it's like a lot of different sections, and so you can kind of break it up where you learn about like different researchers, biologists, preservationists, and they're all doing different things. Like some people are trying to keep carp from getting into the Great Lakes, and that was a problem that was created when we imported Asian carp, and to try to solve other problems, and how it just spirals from there. It's, all about trying to solve problems created by people who are trying to solve problems. And some of these are super interesting, like developing coral that can survive higher ocean temperatures, or different things that, we have really, there's a lot of things we've done to the environment that are terrible and aren't going to just recover anytime soon. But there are also things that we could do that could help, but will we just damage the world more? And I thought that it was a very interesting discussion on a lot of those things, and the different companies and the different people and the different research that is going into conserving the environment. So interesting read if you are interested in anything about global warming and environmentalism. Like, I think you would really enjoy this book. It gives a lot to think about and a lot of different perspectives. So highly recommend if you are interested in the subject. And that is everything that I've read this past week or so. If you have read any of these books, let me know what you think about them, and I will be back next week with another book wrap up. So I will see you all on the next one.